Well, if you thought Season 22 was going to be a load of old balls, you'd be correct, as this season Bungie have introduced Elemental Orbs, which is a new sandbox mechanic. And while it's pretty fun at base, there's actually a bunch of stuff we can do with these, and today we're going to focus on a setup with Solar Elemental Orbs, where we can get a huge amount of Scorch damage, make some massive ignitions, and generally destroy a bunch of enemies without too much effort. So if you love Scorch, Incandescent, and great balls of fire, then hopefully the video today should be the one for you. We're also using SUNSHOT in this one quite a bit. If you haven't tried it out yet, it's absolutely going off at the moment, of course benefiting from some of the hand cannon buffs that we got with Season of the Witch. As you guys can see, it's absolutely blasting through groups of enemies right here, so SUNSHOT will certainly be in the mix in the video. But I've also got to say a big thank you to my friend Duddits for helping us out with the video today. He makes some awesome build content on his channel, so totally recommend that you check that out, linked below. As you can see in some of the gameplay here though, there's some really fun ways to use these, and so, starting with Elemental Orbs on the new artifact, for Solar Elemental Orbs, while using a Solar subclass, Solar Weapon Final Blows have a chance to spawn a Solar Elemental Orb, and Solar Orbs can be thrown to create a solar explosion that scorches targets it damages. These things behave pretty much like strand tangles, so they are a bunch of fun, but of course they're solar and have the additional element of being able to scorch targets. Of course there are Void and Arc variants of these, but focusing on the solar variant today, when we throw them, there is an initial damage blast that can potentially take out a few targets depending on the difficulty of the content, but on top of that they leave behind Scorch Burn on any targets that survive, so they're actually pretty useful in a bunch of ways. One of the reasons we're running SUNSHOT in this video, of course with it being a solar weapon and we're on a solar subclass, it is one of the better weapons for producing elemental orbs because we can get so many multi-kills with just a few rounds from the weapon, and SUNSHOT has only gotten better with the buffs that we've had this season. Of course it has Sunburn, where the weapon fires explosive rounds and highlights targets that take damage. And it has Sun Blast, where targets killed with SUNSHOT explode in solar energy. Of course, any solar weapons will produce elemental orbs, but with how easy it is to get multi-kills with SUNSHOT, it just makes dropping those elemental orbs on the ground even easier. So it's definitely a weapon that I would recommend trying out with this build, but of course there are a bunch of others that you can use as well. But moving back to the elemental orbs themselves, and at Shuro-Chi here for reference, the base Scorch damage is ticking at 856. So it's alright at base, but it can be significantly boosted in different ways. So looking at Dawn Chorus for Warlocks, Daybreak projectiles deal more damage, but the Scorch damage from any source is improved, and we gain a small boost to melee energy when that damage is output. So with this alone, we can boost that damage from 800 or so all the way up to 2,500 damage per tick. And in itself, that means it'll kill more stuff naturally, but it also brings us closer to getting some juicy solar ignitions. So to look at other ways to improve this, we have other artifact perks like Frenzied Stacks, and when armor charged by picking up an Orb of Power, we get bonus damage to thrown tangles or elemental orbs, and the armor charge decays over time. And so each armor charge that we actually have will increase the amount of damage that these thrown elemental orbs do. So if you had 5 armor charges active, you can see right here, we're getting 23,000 damage per tick, which is absolutely massive. Of course though, it requires quite a lot of armor charge focus mods in order to have 5 stacks of armor charge. So for the purposes of this build, we were only running 3 armor charges. Just keep in mind that you can run more if you want even more Scorch damage. However, in this gameplay, for the vast majority of the time, we were running 3 solar weapon surges instead, which of course is improving the performance of SUNSHOT or any other solar weapons you may be using. And in this setup, it just made it easier for SUNSHOT to get multi-kills and drop elemental orbs in the first instance. So you can kind of go in whichever direction you prefer. And so with 3 times armor charge active, we're getting a huge boost overall, going from our initial damage tick of 856 all the way up to 4,879. So again, that's Dawn Chorus, Frenzied Stacks, and Solar Weapon Surges, combining to increase that Scorch damage by more than 400%. But it's also affecting the base impact like we said, so weaker enemies are generally gone. They're already dead by the time this hits them, but for anything else, including tankier targets or groups of enemies, they're now losing health at a remarkable rate via those Scorch ticks. And as we can see on the Lost Sector boss here, as well as absolutely destroying groups of enemies, this can be used to put out significant damage to single targets with more health. But looking even further into how this can work, on the subclass, when running Ember of Ashes, we get some juicy ignitions because the fragment increases the number of Scorch stacks that apply to the target. So if you throw out a grenade and a melee, or a solar orb, or indeed any combination of those things, we're now starting to see very regular ignitions where the targets explode with an even more significant amount of damage. So this is a bunch of fun, and with a little bit of customization on our build, elemental orbs are now really doing some work. There are a couple of other things to take note of though. On the subclass, we're also running Touch of Flame, and that improves our grenades and heat rises, where final blows while airborne increase the duration of heat rises and grant melee energy. So when we're in the air, which we often will be throwing orbs, ranged melees or grenades, you can see that we're getting loads of melee energy back, which is just an added benefit, and with Celestial Fire, it's a pretty easy way to further scorch targets. And that melee energy is returning with just a few kills while we're in the air. But on top of that, we're running Ember of Wonder, where rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions generates an orb of power, and obviously that's really good for keeping that armor charge available. But then there are things like Ember of Char, which is a really solid one here because solar ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets, and paired with Ember of Eruption, solar ignitions have an increased area of effect, so they reach out a little further. And plus, very useful to make this tick is Ember of Ashes, where we can apply even more Scorch stacks to targets, which is simply going to improve the consistency of those solar ignitions. And obviously, if you enjoy using incandescent weapons and things like that, or anything that can burn targets, it ends up being a really fun combination of elements, which is both fun in terms of gameplay, but also is a fairly legit option for more difficult content as well. So there we go guys, just a fun way to take advantage of solar elemental orbs. But of course they can be used across various classes, paired up with different exotics and things like that. So let us know if you have any similar setups down in the comment section, or indeed any builds focused around the other elements Arc and Void. And for today, I hope the video has been useful. If it has, be sure to get subscribed and I'll keep you posted with more Destiny content. Also, once again, thanks to my friend Duddits. It's certainly worth checking out his channel if you're interested in various interesting builds for the game, so that's linked down below. But for today, I appreciate you all tuning in, and I will catch you guys very soon.